talk about. So number one, Aleph. Asalirchois kol gufoi. You can't wash your entire body, or a filo roiv gufoi, or even the majority of your body, b'mayim chamim, in warm water.
Rabbi, can you mute people, because there are people on the phone and it's reverberating?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No problems. Okay. Is that better? No, you're muted.
It's great. Excellent. Just what we needed. Thank you.
Okay, no problems. So we can't wash our entire body or even the majority of our body in warm water. Hot water, let's say. Afilu huchamo be'erev Shabbos, even if this water was heated up before Shabbos. We can't wash the majority or more of our body in warm water. Did you want to ask something? No. Even if we're not washing all in one shot. So let's say like a sponge bath or something. I mean, not that you can use a sponge on Shabbos, but with some type of cloth or whatever it is. Even if it's not in one shot, if you're going to end up in this wash the majority or more of the body, then we can't do that, even if we're doing it limb by limb. Even if you just wash limb by limb, you still can't do it. Also, but of gufoi, we can't wash the majority of our body like this. Now, even to enter a bathhouse just to sweat, not that we have public bathhouses so much today, but the same idea as a sauna, or a schwitz, as they call it in Yiddish. You can't go there just to sweat. Gam came also, that's also you're not allowed to do. Avol, however, what can you do? Mutalirchaitz ponov, yadov, veraglov. You can wash your face, the yadov, your hands, which includes your armpits, veraglov, your feet, which includes the groin area, etc. The chamim with warm water, shechamim be'erev Shabbos, that was heated up before Shabbos. So for sure, cold water, but even if you have a supply of warm water that was heated up before Shabbos. Right, so we can't have a shower, but those who live in places where it gets very sweaty, the places where we sweat a lot, we can wash. Okay, questions, comments? We're good, okay.
Oh, now that the water is heated by the sun, can't we wash with the warm water was heated by the sun on Saturday?
That's a good question. Now, meaning like this. Solar hot water heaters that we install commercially is not really heated by the sun. It's really heat up electrically, but the sun, is
the electric
various things.
The electric doesn't get hooked up.
I understand, but
unless there is no sun.
Right, but still, so that's a separate issue. That's going to depend on how that particular system works. But let's say you had a black barrel, and you put water, and it just heat up directly from the sunlight.
Yeah.
Then that would be less of an issue, and we're going to discuss things like that shortly.
Okay.
But the regular standard commercial hot water systems we have, even the solar powered, are usually problematic.
Oh.
So anyway, base. Now we're not exactly sun heated, but now water that flow from a hot heat source. For example, the hot springs in Tveria, yes.
And when it says here that you may wash your face, hands, and feet, and the comment that's made by the Ma is that as long as it doesn't constitute most of the body, what about a child, a baby?
Yeah, so a baby a little bit differently, a little bit different, but generally children are the same. But if we wash our hands, I mean, they just have smaller hands, and as we said, hands, face, and feet includes armpits, and feet includes the groin and various things. But that's still a minority of the body. Because the largest, if we're not doing the full legs and the full torso, it's still always going to be the minority.
Okay.
Right, so naturally hot water, like the hot springs of Tveria. And I guess we have in different parts of America also, I guess, naturally hot springs. Now, imheim bekarka, if they're in the ground. Now, obviously the hot water's in the ground, but what we mean is we didn't take it out. We didn't fill a bathtub with the hot water, right? Still in the ground. The ein makom makayra, and you didn't roof the area. Because roofing an area increases the heat, traps the heat in and makes it even hotter. So if it's a natural hot spring, then you can go in there, even your whole body. So if anyone who has a natural heated spa in their backyard, from underground water, so that's the way to go, by the way. If you can install that, you're good. So then you can wash your whole body. If it's a natural hot water. However, right, just to go back a step, I forgot to say in the introduction, the reason that we can't use large amounts of water that was heated even before Shabbos is rabbinic decree. We're worried that people are going to end up heating water on Shabbos. All right, so if we're going to heat the water, so this is cooking. And this is, by the way, one of the way most hot water systems work, at least in houses, when as the hot water comes out, more cold water goes in, it gets heated up. So this is now, even if it's going to be a solar hot water system, then we're going to be cooking the water on Shabbos, heating up the water on Shabbos. This is the problem. But if we have a natural hot spring and it's not roofed, so we're not adding to the heat, then there's no concern that we're going to heat up the water on Shabbos. So now we can even put our whole body in. I will imheim of a kli, but if these water in some type of vessel, some type of utensil, a bathtub or a bucket or anything, or we've roofed the area, keep in the heat or increase the heat, also then we can't use this natural heated water anymore. And even to walk in, we mentioned this before, but even to walk in to a bathhouse, not to wash, but it's hot in there, there's a fire under the water in these old bathhouses, keeping it warm. So you're going to start sweating. Even that's a problem. Even though that's technically permissible on Shabbos, but the concern is that people are going to go to the bathhouse and say that they're only going there to sweat when really they're going there to wash. So therefore, we're not want people to go in there to sweat either. Now, there are those that say, so there's room to be lenient. The chol sheheim bakarka, as long as this hot spring is still in the ground in its natural spring area, then afil amokim makayra, even if it's roofed. So before we said it was a problem if it's roofed, but now we have a more lenient opinion. If it's roofed, you're allowed to wash there. Okay. So natural hot water is not a problem. Because again, our concern with using hot water, even water that was heated before Shabbos, our concern is that someone's going to want more water and they're going to heat up water on Shabbos. Particularly today, our hot water systems automatically heat up water on Shabbos. But water that's in the ground, a natural hot spring, then obviously there's no concern of heating up water anyway. So we can use that. All right. Gimel, number 3. You can immerse the entire body in cold water. Now, although we normally use the term immersing about a mikveh, here we're not necessarily talking about a mikveh. No matter someone wants to, they're really hot, they can immerse their entire body in cold water. Now, don't think that means you can go off to the swimming pool necessarily. We'll discuss that soon. We'll get there. But let's say you had a bathtub, filled up your bathtub with cold water, and you just jumped in the cold water. Now, I will point out, although you're allowed to, there's a custom not to, because we're going to discuss an issue later. We're concerned about drying our hair. That we can't squeeze water out of our hair, similar to we can't squeeze like juice and things out of a fruit. So we can't take anything that's edible out of its shell or husk for various things. Now, although most of us don't drink our bath water, after we've had a wash, but particularly if we look at, it's technically drinkable. And if we look at water quality of the past, often our bath water is a lot cleaner than people had, in times in the past. So if there's a lot of water in our hair, again, this depends on how much hair you have and various things, and they squeeze it out, that can be problematic. So there's a custom not to wash even in cold water, but technically you're allowed to. So particularly those in very hot or humid climates, if you need to, then you can. But a person, after they've washed in cold water, they shouldn't stand next to the oven to heat up. Shouldn't the habikiruchas bechamim, because it's like washing in hot water, right? Because the water on us is going to heat up as we stand next to the oven. Again, most of us don't have our bathtub next to the ovens in our house nowadays, but so people had the one room, the oven was in one of the walls, they had the portable bathtub, whatever it was, so that could happen. Now, even just to wash your hands, forget about washing, you don't wash your whole body, just wash your hands in cold water. You shouldn't warm your hands up next to the oven while the hands are still wet. Why? Because it's similar to washing with water you heated today on Shabbos. So that's the problem.
What if you have heating running, in the winter in the bathroom, the heating is blowing?
Okay, but you're not standing there with your hands over the oven, warming up your hands.
Well, okay, you're not standing over it, but the whole room is being warmed up from the heating. That's okay?
Yeah, that's okay, because it's now we're concerned about the appearance.
It's not direct, it's indirect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the now you can't, water that was heated up on Shabbos, you can't even wash one limb. Or when we say limb, we mean even any part of your body, in other words. So first, if you wash in the cold water, you have to dry whichever part, let's say your hands, to dry your hands really well. And after your hands are dry, then you can put your hands next to the oven to heat up. This is Ayin Le'il Simon Pace, if on base, it says to look back earlier. She asked me that you should rub them well before drying them. Says on a little bit of water. Because as we discussed when we learned that earlier, The concern is if we have very wet hands and we take a towel and we start to dry our hands, then what will happen is we'll end up squeezing the water out of the towel or the cloth or various things. So if you just rub your hands a little bit, just rub off the water and then dry the hands. That's the best thing to do. Okay. So far we said we can't wash our whole body in warm water, even if it was heated before Shabbos. We can wash in natural warm water, like natural hot springs, even our whole body. And we can immerse the entire body in cold water if we want, but we have to be careful about heating ourselves up afterwards, while we're still wet. Okay. Dalit, number 4. Now, a person who is who's washed themselves, they have to be very careful about squeezing water from their hair. Now, there's a few issues here. Number 1 is we have to be careful about washing our hair with our hands to start with, because we're worried about pulling out hair, which is a problem in Shabbos. All right, we don't want to pull out hairs. We also, here the issue is with squeezing the water out of the hair, it's rabbinically prohibited because you don't actually need the water. But nevertheless, it's no problem. Similar, you can't swim on Shabbos. You also lashed b'Shabbos v'Yontiv. You're not allowed to swim on Shabbos or Yontiv. Likewise, you can't cause anything to float. Could go in, for example, like even wood chips on the water. Now, here when we're saying that you can't make anything float in the water, if you went to a river or something, in your bath, you're allowed to put a rubber ducky or something like that in the water and let it float. That's fine because and we also have to worry about carrying if we're outside when we put anything on the river, and we'll discuss that in more depth shortly. Right, so we can't swim, even though you're allowed to immerse the body. You can't swim, and therefore, in the full Shulchan Aruch, it writes that it's the custom not to go to an ocean or a pool, even if you're not swimming. Okay. Well, let's say you're going to go to a place where you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos. So we'll just make up an example. A person has a pool, but it's outside the house and there's no Eruv. Right? So it's not in your backyard. It's in a complex where the city doesn't have an Eruv, the complex doesn't have an Eruv, or you just need to cool down in a river, something, whatever it is. So you can't. So it's outside on Shabbos. So you can't carry 4 amas, approximately 6 feet on Shabbos. So if you're going to go to such a place to cool down, right? It's 110 degrees out. It's very humid. The person's overheating. He needs to get this cold water. He has to be extremely careful. That before he gets out of the water, he has to remove the water from it, because you can't carry the water that's on your body. So he has to, like really sort of shake it off, remove it, dry himself well. Really dry himself well, so he shouldn't carry the water from Rishus to Rishus. because now he's outside this Rosh Hashanah, and he's gonna step inside to his house, let's say, which is Rosh Hashanah, and he's carrying, in his body and hair and various things, a few cups of water, let's say, the equivalent. So that's one issue. He has to make sure not to carry on his body. Another issue to be concerned about. Even the river itself, you have to be careful. What do you have to be careful about the river? That you shouldn't carry the water 4 amos, 4 amos. Because the river is a Carmelis. It's, I would say, rabbinic Rosh Hashanah, public domain. So let's say you're going to walk within the river, so the river's knee deep, and you've got a lot of water on your body and hair. You have a lot of hair, there's a lot of water in there. Then you can't walk 4 amos, approximately 6 feet. Now, since most people don't know the details of what to be careful, when to be careful, how to be careful, therefore, the custom is already spread throughout all Ashkenazi countries, that we don't wash at all on Shabbos, even in cold water, unless it's for a mitzvah. Could go in, for example, Isha Nida, a lady who is Nida, she wants to go to mikveh, the Ish the Kriya, or a man who is going to go to the mikveh. So unless it's for some type of mitzvah, the custom by Ashkenazim already is not to wash it all. Sfarim a little more lenient. I'm presuming has to do they were in warmer climates generally. So people needed to cool down a bit more. But the best thing is, to wash your face from the tap of cold water is no problem. As we said, the hands, which includes the armpits, the feet, which includes the groin area, cold water is no problem. But more than that, to immerse ourselves, and actually go into water or pour water over us, we would only do that for a mitzvah. Okay. Questions, comments? No? We're all good. Okay. Hey, number 5. Now you're allowed to stand at a riverbank and wash your hands in the river. So let's say you did that. There's no concern about taking water from the river to the riverbank. Right? So we mentioned before we had a concern about taking water from the river and carrying 4 amos within the river or riverbank area. We also mentioned the concern of taking water in our body and going out from this Rosh Hashanah and carrying the water into the Rosh Hashanah from this public domain to a private domain, carrying water with us into, let's say, a house. That was a concern. But from the river itself, just to the riverbank, is not a concern. What's the difference? The reason is the Fisha Narhu Carmelis, the river itself is a Carmelis. It's the rabbinic public domain. It's a public domain that's missing an ingredient or two. Wasmas Nahar, he Gamkin Carmelis. And the riverbank is also a Carmelis. This is if you have an actual, riverbank, not just a big drop or something. And you're allowed to carry from one Carmelis to another Carmelis. But Pachas Arba Amos, as long as you're going less than 4 Amos, approximately 6 feet. So when the there was this rabbinic decree of a Carmelist. So just to remind ourselves, it's been a while. So a public domain has to have a certain width, has to have a certain size, and one of the ingredients, at least according to almost everybody, is that you need to have 600,000 people there. So let's say a main highway might have that, but let's say a site, a small suburban street, it might be wide enough. It might have all the other ingredients, but it's there's very little through traffic, and you don't have so many people going there. So it's a Carmelist. It's Reshus Harabim, public domain, missing some of the criteria. So the sages, nevertheless, forbade carrying there just like a public domain, because it's so similar. Because someone will be carrying along the road, all of a sudden they go around the corner to the main highway, and they don't realize that it's changed. So therefore, we don't carry in these areas at all. So the river and the riverbank are both Carmelists. So we can't carry 4 amos, approximately 6 feet within this area. But to carry from one Carmelist to another Carmelist, if that distance is less than the 4 amos, less than 6 feet, then that's not a problem. So you just have to make sure that you dry yourself well before you walk 4 amos. So so you can put your hands in the river, wash your hands in the river. You can take the water on your hands with you as you move your hands back out of the river onto the riverbank, as long as you just make sure that you dry your hands before you start walking. Okay. Any questions? No?
Yeah, Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
So in number 2, it said that if the pool is in the ground and it's not covered by a roof, you can wash your entire body. But then later on in number 4, it says you should be careful not to swim, since it's forbidden to swim.
The pool in number 2 is not like a swimming pool. It's like natural heated springs.
Okay, so if it's a pool in your backyard where you have an Erev and you don't have a suit, so you don't have the problem of squeezing, and when does it come? When does it cross over from swimming to just immersing? I guess is my question.
So we said like this. Generally, people shouldn't. The minig, the custom, but a custom brought in Shulchan Aruch, so it's almost the halacha, is that we wouldn't immerse even in cold water. So I mean, even in the pool for washing, unless it's for a mitzvah. So mitzvah mean, let's say a person's going to the mikveh or something. Where you could be lenient, as long as just sort of immersing sort of in out, particularly if it's a smaller, let's say like a jacuzzi or spa or something like that, it's not a big pool, is that, there are certain places where it's very, very hot. And I apologize for the background noise. There's workmen in the area, nothing I can do about it. But, my wife's also going to the dentist soon. That's not the drill. That's anyway. So if it's really hot, you can immerse. Now, I'll also point out, not so much today, but pre-air conditioning, there were certain places, at the end of the hot day, you really needed to immerse in a cold pool, otherwise it was pretty dangerous. It was really, quite hot. So that's allowed to cool off. So really, I know I'm sort of not giving a short answer to your question, but it really depends what you're doing. If it's washing at all, then you really shouldn't go in the pool at all. If it's to cool off and you're sort of like in, out, then there's not so much of a problem. Okay.
What about things like doing physical therapy in the pool that it's for a person's health?
Yeah, so that should probably leave on Shabbos. Best to skip that on Shabbos if you can. You know, when we talk about health, we're talking about, you know, generally what we can do on Shabbos is, you know, when there's some type of danger to life or limb. You know, I guess theoretically, if someone, the therapy, if they didn't exercise this limb, they could lose all movement, chas v'shalom, you know, even missing a day, you know, then something to speak about. But otherwise, important to skip Shabbos. Okay. Volv, number 6. You can clean your hands by rubbing them with crushed grain. Even though your hands may be wet. Right, so I'll be honest with you, I've never tried to wash my hands with crushed grain, but seemingly it works. And the concern about being wet is that, you know, you might end up making a dough type thing, but, you know, we're not concerned about that. As long as that you don't put the water directly onto the crushed grain. So crushed grain you can wash with. But you're not allowed to wash your hands with salt. The kol shekain burius, and how much more so with soap. We'll speak about soap in a minute. Mishum de menoyach, because it liquefies, it dissolves. So we've got a few issues here. So let's leave salt for a moment, because I'm not sure how many people are going to wash their hands with salt this week. But let's talk about soap. Probably most of us use soap occasionally, at least. So the soaps we have today is another issue on top of this. Soaps we have today, smoothing. So one of the things we can't do on Shabbos is smoothing a surface. So the, you know, soap bars, the bars of soap we have today, that when we use that, you'll be like smoothing. If it has writing in it, it's another issue of erasing the writing. The soap bars is talking about there, they were like harder sort of soap. There, the issue is the solid becomes a liquid, which is a noilid. It's like it creating a new substance, which that's also the problem with the salt. The salt dissolves totally into the water, and what was solid became like a liquid. So if someone needs to use soap on Shabbos, we use liquid soap. You know, so good to have next to your sink, one of those, you know, little pump sort of liquid soap containers. Very handy for Shabbos.
Rabbi,
Yes.
this thing about the bran. So
Yes.
they say that the remedy, if your cell phone falls in water, is you take it apart as much as you can without, you know, going to the insides, and then put it in a bowl of rice, and the grain absorbs the wetness out of the phone, and
Yeah.
you leave it in there for a couple of days, I guess, and then you can start your phone again. So there's something in the grain that absorbs the water.
Yes. Yeah. That's and that's why he needs to tell us that it's not a problem with making a dough, even though it absorbs it, as long as we're not putting it on directly. Okay. Zion, number 7. Now let's say you have water that you would not use for washing, but it's for medicinal purposes. So, by the way, that doesn't mean fire water. You know, we're not talking about whiskey now, for medicinal purposes only. about something else. So you have water that you only use for medicinal purposes. You're going, for example, temroim, the dirty water. Maybe something being soaked in it. It's certainly not for washing, but it has some type of medicinal purpose. Or it smells really bad. Now you can't wash with them on Shabbos. So besides any other issues we're speaking about that potentially could be a problem, even if it was all cold and you had it there and even to wash your hands or face, it's still a problem. Why? Because it's obviously you're doing this for medicine. And as we said, any medicinal activities that are not life-threatening or limb-threatening, we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Now, remember, what does this apply? This is if you're going to linger, you're going to wait in the water, so you stay there. But if you're not going to stay in the water, you just like sort of in out or just pour it over your hand or something. Mutter, then it's allowed. Because then it looks like you're just cooling yourself off. So let's say there was some type of something you put into water that helps swelling. Right? Again, we're not talking about dangerous or life-threatening swelling. It's a little bit of comfort. And it's not drinkable water now because of whatever this herb or whatever it is. Smells terrible, looks terrible, whatever. So you couldn't put your hand or feet in it and soak them there for extended periods. But if it would help by pouring it over your hand, if you keep pouring and pouring and pouring, and from one bucket to the next, then it looks like you're just cooling down and it doesn't necessarily look like you're having medicine, so there's no problem. Now, the hot springs at Tveria and the like, so they, these naturally heated hot springs. If people only use them for medicine, people don't wash in them. They only go there, there's a lot of minerals in them and various things. You only go there to, for medical treatment. Then you're not allowed to go, can't go in them on Shabbos for medical reasons, although you can still wash there to take advantage of the hot water. I feel that ain't showing behem, even if you're not staying in that. Maybe you're just going in, out. If you're doing it for medicinal purposes, you can't do that on Shabbos. Okay, so we'll sum it up. Obviously, we can't heat up water on Shabbos for washing. Water that was heated up on Shabbos, even accidentally, whatever it is, we're not allowed to wash with them even after the fact. Because we are not allowed to wash with water that was heated on Shabbos, our sages made a decree that we can't wash the majority of our body with water that was heated even before Shabbos, in case we come to heat more water. But if we're washing less than the majority, so say for example, we're allowed to wash our hands, which includes our armpits, our face, our feet, which includes the groin area. So the places where we sweat, we can use water that was heated before Shabbos. We can wash in naturally heated springs. Water that was heated before Shabbos, we can use for a mitzvah. So for example, the mikveh. Cold water. So technically, you can put your whole body in. You're not allowed to swim. The custom is not to. Custom is still to only wash the hands, face, and feet. And we can't soak ourselves in water that's for medicinal purposes when it's non-life-threatening or limb-threatening circumstances. Okay, any questions? No? Okay.
No, Rebbe, but thank you. I really feel clean after this year.
That's good. All right, the next chapter, for those who have pets. Now, we're going to be speaking about animals in general. It's really coming from the point of view of farm animals. You know, people had a few chickens, maybe they owned a horse. You might have had a house cow. That was how it went. Pets like we have today, there's going to be a few differences, and we'll discuss it when we get there. So Siman 80, Pei Zayin, chapter 87. Things you have to be careful with animals and fowl. So there's two words used here for animals. So behemoths, generally what we'll call today domesticated animals. You know, cows, sheep, various things. And chayas, literally wild animals, but it could be even if you have a pet, the same person has a pet here. But the species is not a domesticated animal, and birds. All right, number one, Aleph. Ksiv says in the Torah, the man Yenuach Sharecha v'chamorecha v'goyim. Says when you rest, not only you have to rest, it says your sons, your daughters, your household, and then it says your ox and your donkey. Hare ki hasira Torah. So here the Torah is giving us a commandment, a biblical commandment. Shegam habahema shel Yisrael tanoach. A Jewish person's animal has to rest on Shabbos too. Now, v'loi bahema bovad, not only your animal, meaning, you know, like your work animals, like your ox and your donkey, elakol balichayim, but any living creature, any animal. And therefore, you cannot allow your animal to carry a load on Shabbos. Even inside. Sorry about the background noise. Even if the animal goes out on its own. So it's carrying, I don't know, let's say it's got a saddle left on it, and now the animal just wanders out of the private domain into the public domain on its own. The Shusarab into this public domain, but it's Siya Masa, and it carries this load, the saddlebags, you know, with whatever you got in it. This person has transgressed a positive commandment of the Torah. This is a positive commandment to make sure that his animals rest on Shabbos as well. Now, it's not only a load, you know, say a saddlebag full of grain, you know, or the shotgun, you know, hanging from the horse. It's not only that. Even if it's something that's a decoration, you know, they put different, you know, like feathers on certain animals or chains, you know, to make it look fancy. So even that is a problem. The kamokim habimasa, even though it's to beautify, it's still carrying a load. Avol, however, dava shulder for wasam, if it's something for the animal's health. Kamoi, for an example, eged shalamaka. There's a bandage around the wound. The maturas is haispa. The animal's allowed to go out to a public domain with this bandage on. The chayna likewise, something that's needed for the animal's safekeeping. Right, so for example, like a dog collar, you know, might have the address, you know, little, you know, so people know where the animal is, or the collars to, you know, connect the leash to it or something like that. So it's to keep the animal safe. This it has the same halacha as clothing for a human, maturas seisba, and the animal's allowed to go out wearing it on Shabbos. Va'ach mashu rak shmira seira, but something which is only for extra safeguarding. So not a normal safeguarding. And the next paragraph, we should have time, is going to give some examples of this. Also, then he's not allowed to. So only regular safeguard. So I'm going to use the example of a dog collar, which is a regular, normal thing. Similarly, an object that this particular animal cannot be safeguarded with, even though another animal is safeguarded with. So, let's say one animal has to have special, it's got very delicate feet, so it needs special, like little shoes or something to be able to go out in the street. And another animal doesn't make a difference. They've got tough paws or hooves or whatever it is, and there's no difference. So even though other animals might need this clothing or this object, and it's appropriate for other animals to wear it, for this behemoth, for this animal, it's unnecessary. Therefore, it's like carrying a load, and therefore it's forbidden.
Rabbi,
Okay. Yes.
I'm thinking that it's in this week's Parsha, it talks about the kindness towards animals that Rivka displayed.
Yes.
And here, the Shulchan Aruch, this is talking about the kindness towards animals just for the animal's sake, not for a human being's sake. Like
Yes.
the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's we have a mitzvah to look after animals. You know, it's not to the extreme. I don't want to get off the topic. It's not the extreme of some of the animal rights groups. You know, I remember, you know, I lived in New York. If you call it living, I resided in New York from mid-2000 to mid-2005. And while I was there was an incident where there was some animal rights protesters. They saw a lady in Manhattan wearing a fur coat, and they beat her to death. You know, this is taking it overboard. That this is making the animal's life more important than the human. Now, that doesn't mean we can take advantage of animals. You know, I'll give you an example. When it comes to animal testing, you know, sometimes people, you know, they start torturing, you know, rabbits and various things. They want to see how far they can push certain ingredients, let's say in a deodorant, you know, because the rabbits have sensitive skin. So they're just for really no real gain, hurting an animal, so that you can't do. But let's say there was testing a medicine or a surgical procedure, and it can save or enhance human life. You know, we're allowed to, because the human, the animal doesn't have the same rights as the human. Nevertheless, we can't just abuse, and abuse can even be through neglect or take undue advantage of animals. We have responsibility to the world. You know, this is to the environment also. And again, that doesn't mean we have to chain ourselves to trees. But we have permission to utilize the resources of the world, but we can't do bal tashchis. Now, there's a mitzvah bal tashchis, which we can't, we'll call it waste. You know, we can't unduly destroy things. So, you know, it's a good point that you made. And we see in the Parsha, you know, there's sensitivity. Not only give a person a drink, we see the animals are thirsty, we give them a drink too, you know. So that's an important thing to do. So we mentioned in the introductory paragraph, certain things are appropriate for some animals and not other animals, or what's considered safekeeping and what's considered extra safekeeping that they can't wear. So we're going to give some examples. Base, number 2. A sus, a horse. It can go out with the halter or a bridle. Okay, but not with both. Right, because one of them is enough. One of them is enough to have control of the animal while it's walking. So one of them is good for safekeeping, that you can keep the animal safe. But the two of them, the extra one, whichever one is unneeded, that's going to be considered like a burden, and therefore it's carrying on Shabbos. You're allowed to wrap the straps of the like the reins, I guess, and around the neck and go out with it. As long as the straps are loose enough around the neck, they can easily insert your hand between the strap and the neck in order to pull it in mitzvah the shamit, or if you want to restrain it. So, so the animal doesn't run away. So obviously you can't put it too tight because we're not allowed to strangle the animal, God forbid. But, even if it's loose enough that won't strangle the animal, but if you can't put your hand in easily and quickly, then it's a burden. But if this strap is loose and you can put your hands in easily and you can hold the animal back, so that's called protection, something that you can to protect the animal. And you're allowed to handle this, the halter, this piece goes in the front and place it on the animal, as long as you don't lean on the animal. Now, leaning on the animal, we're talking about now in a way that if the animal would move, you would fall over. So if you're leaning on an animal in a way that it's holding up your weight, that if the animal suddenly disappeared, you'd fall over, then it's carrying you, which is also a burden, which the animal can't carry on Shabbos. Also, this is for Shabbos al-Bal Chai, because you're not allowed to lean on an animal on Shabbos. But a donkey. So that was a horse. A donkey, though, it can't go out with an iron bridle. This is considered extra and over the board guarding of a donkey. Now, I have to confess, I haven't put bridles on donkeys and horses enough to be able to tell you why for a horse that's necessary, and a donkey it's extra. But I'm taking their word for it. Now,
donkeys are more stubborn.
Well, yeah, but we can't use the iron one. We can't use the stronger one.
Yeah, so that means that they have an iron one, but they just don't use it. But I don't even know if they have an iron one for the horse. Only the donkey uses it because he's more stubborn.
Okay, could be.
I'm guessing.
He's also slower moving.
Yeah.
So one needs, to keep hard control over a more lively animal. I don't know. What do I know about horses? And
it's probably smaller as well. So easier to pull. I guess all these factors. Anyway,
excuse me, are you talking about the metal in his mouth?
Yeah.
The resin? No, the horses have it metal too.
Yeah.
The bit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now the a ox or a cow, they don't need this kind of safeguarding. As soon as you can't take them out on Shabbos with a rope around their neck. You can't take a leash. Unless these particular ones are in the habit of running away. Now, im kesher chevel befiasus, if the rope tied to the horse's mouth is a burden, how is that? Well, sorry. If a rope tied on the horse's mouth, it's a burden. How is that master? The fisher ain't boy because that doesn't guard the horse. Should nishma bepiv because it slips off the mouth. It's just over the mouth without the whole sort of bridle piece. But a domla asman, it's not similar to the halter shukasha brosha, which is tied to the whole head. So that you can't take out. On this, I want to have a whole conversation about like when and how we like to take dogs for a walk, various things. There's the same sort of idea with the leash and all this stuff, but it's not time for that discussion today. So maybe we'll just do paragraph 4, and then we'll continue next week, God willing.
Rabbi, what if the horse has a feed bag?
Oh, that's for sure going to be a problem to take it out in the public domain.
I think that would be good because it's to the horse's benefit. He doesn't consider it a
Yeah,
burden.
but it's still carrying. So if it walks around in the paddock or whatever, but to take it out in the public domain, that's considered carrying. So number 4, an animal can't go out wearing a bell. Cows and that used to wear bells, and even though it's been plugged and it doesn't ring. So it's not the music or sound making that's the issue, it's the carrying itself. Even in a town that has an Eruv.
Rabbi, I think you skipped number 3.
Oh, my apologies. Number 3. Sus, v'chein shar behemoths. A horse and likewise other animals. They can't go out wearing a saddle. And this doesn't only mean a saddle for a person to sit on, even a saddle that holds a load. Only a donkey, can go out with its saddle, because it protects it from the cold. Because the donkey by nature gets colder than other animals. So similarly, we see sometimes people have other pets or various things, and if they live in colder climates, they put like a sweater or something on the some type of clothing on the dogs. While if it's just for show, so these people will put Halloween costumes and things on their dogs, right? For Shabbos, that would be they wouldn't be able to go out in the public domain. Now, if a person tied the saddle on the donkey before Shabbos, therefore it will be allowed to go out with it on Shabbos. Because it's like clothes, because it needs to keep warm. But if it's not tied on it, then the donkey, even though it's keeping it warm, if it's not actually tied on, it can't go out on Shabbos. Why? Gezeira, there's a rabbinical decree, that what's going to happen, it'll start to fall off, and you're going to carry it to the animal. It'll fall off, the animal keeps walking a few steps, person goes back, is going to pick up the saddle and carry in the public domain to put it back on the animal. So if it's tied before Shabbos, there's no problem. If it's untied, you can't. Now, over Shabbos, on Shabbos, you can't tie it on. Now, although there's certain knots that are temporary, like we do our shoelaces just with a single bow, but this is not going to work on a donkey saddle. In the Shabbos, there's kind of a love because it has to be tight. Right, it's when he puts it on, That's the Samachalov. Actually, maybe we'll stop here for today. We've gone over time already, but it's in the middle of an idea. So we'll finish there, and we'll discuss general. We'll probably finish a chapter, and then we'll discuss pets. You know, there's going to be some different rules for animals that depend on us. I'm also going to discuss whether animals are muksa, etc. Any questions before you finish up?
Oh,
No? Okay.
No,
Well, in that
very
case, we
good.
wish everyone an amazing week.